Imagine you are standing in the middle of Terminal 3 at Dubai International Airport. It is late February 2026, peak season. The terminal is, as it always is at this hour, a living organism. Hundreds of nationalities moving in every direction at once. A family from Mumbai dragging three oversized suitcases toward check-in. A businessman from Frankfurt asleep in a massage chair with his boarding pass still in his hand. A group of Filipino nurses laughing in the Starbucks line before a night flight to Riyadh. The departures board is a wall of green. Every gate occupied, every flight loading. Outside on the tarmac, an Emirates Airbus A380, the largest passenger aircraft ever built, is pushing back from the gate with 500 people inside it. Then another, then another. And this is the airport that in its peak month alone moved 8.7 million human beings through its doors. The airport that connects every continent to every other continent through a single point in the desert. The airport that, on its best days, processes one human being through its terminal every third of a second. Then, on February 28th, it stops. Not a delay, not a diversion, a full stop. Every gate dark, every flight canceled. The departures board for the first time in living memory showing nothing. And a message from Emirates to its passengers that reads, "Please do not go to the airport." 12,000 flights canceled across the region in 72 hours. Hundreds of thousands of people stranded. A fuel depot near the terminals struck and burning. And the airport that the world treated as its most reliable crossroads, i.e. the one place you could always pass through on the way from anywhere to anywhere, revealed in a single weekend as something far more fragile than anyone had publicly acknowledged. Here is the thing. Dubai International Airport is not dying because of what happened that weekend. It was already dying before that. Slowly, quietly, and on a schedule that its own management had already announced to the world. What the conflict did was not kill the airport. What it did was make it impossible to keep pretending that the airport was invincible. And once you lose that, once the myth of the uninterruptible hub cracks open, you start asking questions that were always uncomfortable to ask. Questions about what this airport actually is, what it was built for, and why, behind all the record numbers and the triumphant press releases, the countdown to its closure was already running long before the first drone ever crossed its airspace. That is what this video is about, not the conflict. The conflict is just the moment the curtain moved. This is about what was behind it. To understand what Dubai International Airport actually represents, you have to go back to a decision made in 1985 that almost nobody outside the aviation industry ever thinks about. Emirates Airline was founded that year with 2 leased aircraft and a government loan of $10 million. That is not a typo. $10 million, the entire founding capital of what would become the world's largest long-haul airline. The logic was deceptively simple. Dubai had no domestic market worth speaking of. No population base large enough to sustain a major carrier on origin and destination traffic alone. So instead of building an airline that flew people from Dubai to somewhere, Dubai built an airline designed to fly people through Dubai between everywhere else. London to Sydney, New York to Mumbai, Frankfurt to Nairobi. The hub was the product. The connection was the entire business model, and for decades, it worked with a precision that stunned the aviation world. By 2025, Dubai International Airport was connecting 291 cities across 110 countries, served by 108 international airlines. India alone sent 11.9 million passengers through its terminals in a single year. In December 2025, the airport posted its busiest month in history. The chief executive of Dubai Airports, Paul Griffiths, he told journalists in February 2026 that the airport expected to approach 99.5 million passengers by year-end, and that the milestone of 100 million was within reach. He called the system mature. He called its performance sustained. He called the records routine. 17 days later, every single one of those flights was on the ground. This is not a story about a bad month. This is a story about structural fragility that record numbers were never going to fix. Let's talk about the numbers that matter, because the ones that made headlines were only half the picture. Dubai International handled 95.2 million passengers in 2025, according to figures published directly by Dubai airports. That is a real number and a genuinely extraordinary one. But the number that almost nobody reported alongside it is this. The airport was already operating at the edge of its designed physical capacity. According to Dubai Airport's own planning documents and public statements from Paul Griffiths, the airport's practical ceiling sits around 115 million passengers annually, a number it was projected to reach by 2031. At 95 million, it was already running out of room. Slot constrained, infrastructure constrained. Surrounded on all sides by residential developments and major highways that physically prevent any meaningful expansion. The airport had essentially grown into a cage that the city built around it. Aviation analytics firm OAG confirmed something important in data published in April 2026. Adding with Dubai International temporarily removed from international rankings due to the conflict disruptions, London Heathrow moved into the top position for international seat capacity. That had not happened in over a decade. London Heathrow, a hub that aviation analysts have spent years describing as outdated and overstretched, became the world's busiest international airport because Dubai stopped operating at full capacity. That single data point tells you how concentrated global aviation had become around a single point in the desert, and how quickly that concentration becomes a liability. Then there is the question of what happens when that point becomes uncertain. Airlines that suspended routes, including British Airways, Lufthansa, Air France, KLM, Cathay Pacific, Singapore Airlines, Finnair, and Air Canada, were not simply waiting for the airspace to reopen. They were reassessing the risk model for operating through a hub that had now been struck multiple times by drone and missile activity. Finnair extended its Dubai suspension through March 29th, Air Canada through March 23rd, Singapore Airlines through March 15th. These are not knee-jerk reactions. These are underwriters and operational risk teams running new numbers on a hub that had just demonstrated it could be taken offline by a geopolitical event it has no ability to control. That is the data the record passenger counts were never going to tell you. Here is what February 28th looked like from the ground, because the scale of it only becomes real when you move it from statistics to people. More than 12,000 flights across the region canceled in the first 72 hours, according to aviation data firm Cirium. Hundreds of thousands of passengers stranded across multiple continents. At Terminal 3 in New Delhi, passengers bound for Kuwait sat on the floor of the arrivals hall, boarding passes in hand, no flight, no timeline, no information. Videos circulated on social media of travelers sleeping on terminal floors from Doha to Abu Dhabi to Dubai itself. The scenes looked like the early days of the pandemic, except this time there was no global health emergency to explain them. At Dubai International Airport, an Iranian drone struck a fuel depot near the terminals. A fire broke out. 4 people were injured on airport grounds. Operations were suspended by the Dubai Civil Aviation Authority as a safety precaution. Emirates told its passengers in plain language not to come to the airport, not to travel unless they had been contacted directly by the airline with a confirmed departure time. The airport that in its peak month had processed 8.7 million people efficiently enough to deliver 89% of arriving bags within 45 minutes was now telling the world, we cannot tell you when you can fly. By March 7th, Emirates had resumed limited operations, running roughly 284 flights a day according to Flight Radar data. Before February 28th, it had operated more than 500 flights a day. On March 16th, a drone struck a fuel tank near the airport again, triggering a new suspension. It was the third drone incident at the airport since the conflict began. Each incident reset the risk calculation for every airline still on the fence about returning. Then each incident made the conversation about the airport's structural position in global aviation harder to avoid. A conflict did not create the vulnerability. It exposed it. The impact of what happened was not distributed evenly because it never is. For ultra-high net worth individuals, the kind that Knight Frank tracks in its annual wealth report and who have been arriving in Dubai in record numbers for 4 years, the disruption was real but manageable. Private aviation, which operates on different risk tolerances, was significantly less affected. Several regional private terminals diverted traffic to Muscat and Riyadh. The assets these individuals hold in Dubai are illiquid enough that a few weeks of aviation disruption does not change the calculus. This cohort weathers geopolitical events. It is practically designed to. On the middle layer, the professional expatriate class, the engineers and financial analysts and logistics managers who form the operational backbone of Dubai's economy, this is where the real economic anxiety concentrated. These are people whose employers are now quietly updating their business continuity plans. People whose international clients are asking whether Dubai is still the right place to host a regional headquarters. Cooper Fitch, the regional recruitment consultancy, documented salary stagnation for mid-level professionals in Dubai throughout 2024 and 2025, with average salary increases of 3 to 4% annually running against rental inflation of 10 to 15% in desirable districts. The airport disruption was not just an inconvenience for this group. It was a data point and a calculation about whether staying makes sense. And then there is the third layer, the construction workers, the hospitality staff, the drivers and cleaners and warehouse workers, and the tens of thousands of people whose income is directly tied to the operational volume of an airport, and the hotels and restaurants and logistics chains that depend on it. A taxi driver who described his income to a journalist as completely cut off from one day to the next. A worker in airport catering who had not received a shift schedule for 2 weeks and was sending messages home to his family explaining that the remittances would be delayed. These are the people the passenger count statistics never name. They are the human infrastructure beneath the infrastructure. And when the airport goes quiet, they have no buffer. Dubai without departures, Dubai without arrivals, Dubai without the one thing that made it worth being Dubai. That silence lands differently depending on which version of the dream you came here to live. Here is what the conflict did not cause, because this is the part of the analysis that matters most. Dubai International Airport was not going to be the world's greatest hub forever. That decision had already been made, announced publicly, and put on a construction schedule. In April 2024, the ruler of Dubai approved a $35 billion expansion of Al Maktoum International Airport, located 37 kilometers southwest of the city. The plan is to build the world's largest airport on that site, with an eventual capacity of 260 million passengers annually, 5 parallel runways, 400 aircraft gates, and a terminal complex spanning roughly 70 square kilometers, approximately 5 times the footprint of the current Dubai International. By 2032, according to Dubai Airport's CEO Paul Griffiths, all operations will transfer from Dubai International to Al Maktoum. Emirates, which accounts for roughly 2/3 of all traffic at the current airport, will move its entire operation. The other airlines will follow, and Dubai International Airport, the hub that spent more than a decade as the busiest international gateway on the planet, will close. Griffith said it plainly at the Arabian travel market in 2025. There is little sense, he noted, in operating 2 major airport hubs within 70 kilometers of each other. He added that by the time the transfer is complete, every asset at Dubai International will be approaching the end of its useful operational life. Keeping it open, he said, would not be economically feasible without a massive additional investment. The plan, in other words, was always for Dubai International to die. The conflict simply introduced a question that nobody had seriously modeled. What if it started dying before the replacement was ready? Al Maktoum International Airport currently handles cargo and a handful of commercial routes. Its first major passenger terminal is not expected to be operational until 2032 at the earliest, with full capacity coming online in stages extending potentially into the 2050s. The project was originally planned for completion in 2017. The 2008 financial crisis pushed it back by a decade. There is a window running from roughly now through 2032, during which Dubai's aviation infrastructure is neither fully here nor fully there. Dubai International is at capacity and under geopolitical stress. Al Maktoum is under construction. And the east-west aviation corridor that the world built around this city is looking for reassurance that it has nowhere else to find. Istanbul Airport, which had been methodically expanding its capacity and route network under Turkish Airlines for years, moved into the position of Europe's busiest airport in April 2026, in terms of seat capacity, partly because of the vacuum left by Dubai's disruption. Singapore's Changi saw a quiet increase in bookings from passengers who had previously defaulted to Dubai connections. These things happen fast in aviation. Habits form around reliability. and reliability is not something you recover with a press conference. Dubai International Airport is not gone. As of this recording, it is operational, running a reduced schedule, with Emirates gradually rebuilding toward pre-conflict levels. Dubai has absorbed serious disruptions before. The financial crisis of 2008 nearly collapsed the city's real estate market, and the airport still grew in its aftermath. The pandemic grounded aviation worldwide in 2020, and by 2022, Dubai was already approaching pre-pandemic records. The capacity to absorb shocks is real, documented, and should not be dismissed. Recovery at the operational level is already underway. But there are two things that do not recover at the same speed as flight schedules. The first is the perception of risk. An airline board reconsidering its Middle East hub exposure does not reverse that decision the day the airspace reopens. An insurance underwriter who has repriced a region does not move the premium back simply because the immediate crisis stabilizes. A corporate travel manager who watched hundreds of her employees stranded across 3 continents for 10 days is now building redundancy into routing plans that did not exist before February 28th. These changes accumulate quietly. They compound. The second is the transition gap. Every month of disruption at Dubai International is a month of uncertainty in the space between what exists now and what is supposed to exist by 2032. If Al Maktoum's construction schedule slips further, and construction schedules for mega projects of this scale almost always do, Dubai faces a period with no hub that has the credibility of the old one and no replacement ready to claim it. The airport that the world built its east-west routing around is not going to disappear overnight. But what made it truly irreplaceable? The unquestioned assumption that it would always be there, always be open, always be moving you to your connection without incident. That assumption is gone. And in aviation, the assumption of reliability is worth more than the terminal itself. If you travel through Dubai regularly, or if the events of the past few weeks change the way you think about your own routing, I want to hear what that calculation looks like for you now. Tell me in the comments. And if this kind of analysis is what you come here for, you know what to do.